Now we're going to be moving on to the next conversation, once again moderated by the great Pierce, about what's next, the do's and the don'ts when building a Web3 startup. In case any of you end up winning the bounty, this will be a really important conversation should you want to take the project further and actually develop it into a full-blown company. And we'd like to welcome the speakers, Arpan Dutta, also aka SSDD, Hermes Brambat, who is the CEO of Vaspex Legal, and Raido Saar, the president of the Estonian Web3 Chamber. A big round of applause, guys, for the speakers, and thank them for being here.
So this is going to be fun because these are some really interesting profiles that we're going to have to chat about this idea of building a Web3 startup. So not just startups in general, but what does that add to it if we're talking about building a Web3 thing? And to that point, with our rockstar panel that we have here, super excited to have Raido, Hermes, and Arpan to have this discussion because each of you comes with a different perspective about what you're doing. So I'm excited to get to have this chat. So maybe just a quick 30-second introduction of who you are and what you do to give the context. And Raido, we'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Raido. I'm president of Estonian Web3 Chamber. And now we are doing this. BananaConf, come see us tomorrow and all the week. So very busy with that. Estonian Web3 Chamber is standing for smarter crypto regulations or Web3 regulations in Estonia and basically all, even in Europe, because Estonian Web3 Chamber is also a member of different associations in European Union, and also I happen to be vice president of a European Web3 organization with you. I am responsible for digital identity, and digital identity is something I am dealing every day. What you had a talk before us here on the stage, this is a really big concern, because without reliable digital identity, the world as we know it today will happen very soon. If we will not solve the problem with privacy and digital identity, because very soon we have to start distinguishing machine from human, as AI is so rapidly developing, and as in the last panel was heard that the information which is collected about us is huge. So we are going to lose this battle if we will not develop new weapons for us.
Fantastic. Hermes?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Hermes Brambat. I'm the founder of Estonian Digital Assets Union and also the CEO of Vaspex Legal, which is a consultation company, and we help to navigate license holders. We help Estonian license holders to navigate the local regulatory environment and be compliant with all the regulators and regulations.
Thanks. Arpan?
Hey, my name is Arpan Dutta. I am one of the co-founders of SavvyBooks. We are one of the sponsors of ETHTallinn. My role is primarily project management, but I also lead kind of the blockchain aspect of the software. What SavvyBooks does is it provides bookkeeping for blockchains, essentially. It's simple, good old boring bookkeeping, something that has existed for 5,000 years before the invention of money. Nothing exists for blockchains. So here I am.
Awesome. And I think it's the same people, so I won't give you a long, boring bio, but my name is Ethan, and I live in Paris. I have Borderless Ventures, which is venture capital investment based actually here in Tallinn. I'll have a workshop later this week at BananaConf on what are called syndicates, which is basically bringing lots of smaller tickets together to make investments. So if you're interested in the whole VC conversation and something you don't know about, one of the things you might look at on the BananaConf schedule is I have a 1-hour kind of workshop AMA that we'll do if you want to come to that. Kind of just to understand what venture capital is, but more importantly, the syndicate idea is really interesting because it allows you to raise money from anybody who has money, who wants to put 1,000 euros or more into your company. So it's a really interesting conversation. That's my main activity, but I do, like on the board of directors with the European Web3 organization and a bunch of other things to basically help democratize Web3 and the blockchain economy and all of our opportunities that we're scaling up here. And so this is a fantastic conversation. Been a founder multiple times now on the VC side, so I hope I'll bring a little bit of that perspective to this, but you all have very interesting versions of what we're going to look at here. I'm curious, since it's mostly the same group, I know you're not all devs, but who here is a startup founder or wants to build something? Who here is an entrepreneur in their head or in reality? Okay, good. So this conversation is, I think, super interesting. And the way I'll start it off is, I think, the main discussion we talked about beforehand while we were having a chat, which is very important as devs to understand. Every company out there like Google or Facebook or any of these companies, most of them, because they've created something very technical, they almost all start off as a 2 or 3 dev founded company. But one of the most important things you have to figure out if you're a developer starting a company is at some point, one of the 2 or 3 of you has to become the business person, unless you're starting that way. A great way to start a company, a startup, is to have a developer and a businessy type person. But sooner or later, somebody has to be the CEO and sell this thing that you've built. And so I think that can lead us into some interesting conversations here about the idea of just in general, the do's and don'ts of building a startup, let alone a Web3 startup. And that is that as developers, you want to solve technical problems. You want to create a solution because you can build things. And that's the foundation of all the great startup stories. But in reality, you're opening up a box of potential problems. And so Hermes, I think we'll start with you just to talk about that point, because if you're a dev, I don't care if you're building a Web3 game and you think you're just doing gaming, but it's in the blockchain space or whatever. The reality is, the moment you throw tokenization at something, you potentially run into regulatory issues because you're dealing with the transfer of capital. I don't care if it's Ethereum or Solana or whatever, you're actually starting to move money around. Even if it's tokens inside of your game, you may think, I'm just building a game. But in reality, Hermes, they're not.
They're not. Of course, it's not always the case.
This is not meant to be a pessimistic conversation. We're all super excited to build shit, but you need to know what you're getting into, just as a preface.
So yeah, I guess we are representing the boring side of the business, but at least equally important, meaning that we work very closely with Estonian auditors and regulators and lawmakers and so on. And lately, we have been seeing many cases where Web3 startup founders and people who have built already successful businesses and they're operating for 3-4 years already, the revenues are growing. Now they have the obligation for financial audits. And at that point, some of the auditors approach us for our expert opinion regarding the compliance and regarding all the specific aspects of the business. And then we make a discovery that actually a startup who has been building a Web3 game, for example, and who think that they are game producers have accidentally turned into financial institution without actually knowing it. So this, of course, opens a huge risk for your company and for your future establishments, because right now, up until today, we have been operating in a quite gray area, and then the Estonian Financial Supervision Authority has not yet enforced all these rules and regulations in a proper manner. But now with the introduction of the MiCA legislation, which is a EU-wide legislation, all these things are going to change. So a lot of Web3 startups and already operational businesses who have some connection with the cryptos or tokens or whatnot, they now really need to start thinking about the actual structure of their business and the tech they're using and the methods they're using to build their applications. So it has to be embedded into the startup process that it used to be in a way that the tech founders just were building like you said, they were building the technical solutions and solving real world problems. That's all very nice, but now they really need to start thinking from the beginning about the regulatory aspect of the thing, because the current law that is put into effect, the MiCA regulation, this is the first step in EU. Now what is going to follow, all DEXs, all DAOs, a lot of Web3 aspects will be also regulated. It's not coming in 1 or 2 years, but it's definitely coming in 4 or 5 years. So yeah, a lot of Web3 businesses need to give a good look at their books and their internal procedures to understand what exactly are they doing. And as the Estonian lawmakers have said that it doesn't matter how you define your products or what you think about your products. What matters is how a regulator classifies your products. So this has to be kept in mind.
Yeah, I think that's really important that it doesn't matter if you use different words or you say you're doing this thing, if what you're really doing is this thing, and it's moving money around or holding money for people, even if money in that sense is whatever token you're talking about because of what you're doing, that's still regulated potentially. So the point isn't that you shouldn't do it. The point of this is that, and then Raido, I'll ask you why Estonia maybe is interesting for this, is that as a dev, you just need to, or just as the founder in general of something, you need to think of this ahead of time. Like we talked about just beforehand, I mentioned privacy by design in the previous discussion, meaning instead of throwing privacy on top of your thing because you now need to be privacy compliant, you can build that into it. Well, the same thing is true here. If you're going to build anything that has tokenomics, has some kind of interaction with coins or tokens in some way, as the developer, you need to be thinking from the beginning about, am I creating any kind of regulatory compliance things that I need to get ahead of? Not that you shouldn't build because you're going to have regulatory issues, but how do you build to be regulatory compliant and to embrace these things moving forward? But Raido, your opinion, what are one or two reasons maybe why Estonia is the place to build these things?
I think Estonia is very ahead of many other jurisdictions in going on the same foot with MiCA regulation. Our KRÜTS, which is Estonian local regulation or law, which will implement MiCA regulation into Estonian legal system, is basically ready. First reading in Parliament has already occurred. Last week, we were in Parliament discussing to make some amendments to these regulations because, to be honest, MiCA is not ideal at all for this part of the business where we are. They say that the main purpose of MiCA is to protect consumers, end consumers and investors, but any law will ever protect end consumer who wants to get rich fast. I think this is human right to be stupid. You can't take it away with any law. So it's those who will give their money away, those will always continue doing this. And usually what's funny is that if they have done it once, they will do it again. And if they do it again, it will become a habit. So this part MiCA will not solve. But clarity and acceptance is what we need. And this is coming with MiCA. And at the moment, it will be over-regulated. We just have to survive somehow. Mm-hmm. For example, you know, maybe this small startup called Air Baltic. Arthur's is there. We were coming back from Web3 conference in Narva and having a discussion in my car that even Air Baltic doesn't know should they have MiCA license or not for their Planes program. What they want to do with Planes is understandable. This is basically a loyalty program. Does it make them to be crypto asset service provider? I'm not sure, but they can afford it. They just in case probably they will take this license. Mm. I think it would be very easy for you to take it from Estonia because we are ahead from Latvia. But in Outcome Symposium, I was in a panel with people from Ministry of Ministry of Finance of Latvia and the bank, Central Bank of Latvia. And they actually think differently from Estonians. They think that we will now become the first crypto country in at least Baltics, maybe in Europe, maybe in the world. Maybe Dubai is shaking at the moment. You see already what happened. Like last week, they already are drowning. Maybe this is the beginning of the end.
It had a liquidity problem.
Yeah, they weren't able to handle this liquidity coming to token 2029. No, 49. So in this, if we're speaking about Estonia, then Estonia has something that no other country has. And this something is digital environment, what you described yourself, that you can open your company from any country in the world, as long as you have internet and you have e-residency card. This is something anybody else has at the moment. So Estonia has some advantages, but those advantages cost nothing if we will not organize our community to be together, because if we think that we are competitors in this market, it might be true behind those borders of this country, because Estonia has so small market, nobody is targeting Estonia. So that means that we all go across the borders and we go after the world. And that means that world is big enough playground that we all can fit there. So what I suggest is that we should support each other, share our knowledge, share our good ideas, because if we come out with 1,000 good ideas, then doesn't matter, because small needs even more. So we need community, we need strong community, and this is what the Estonian Web3 Chamber is building now. And if we are continuing such events like this one today and BananaConf, then I think very soon when we start to feel that we are not alone, then we can survive any legal shock as well. But I think that legal environment will be better in coming years.
So just in case you haven't followed what that stuff is, MiCA is the markets and crypto assets regulation for Europe. And just what that basically means is when you have a regulated financial activity, you have to have licensing. So if you want to be an insurance broker in Lithuania and you get your insurance broker license, you can be an insurance broker anywhere in Europe because that's been dealt with. Well, actually today, if you want to be Binance and you want to be an exchange, or you want to do anything where you deal with a digital asset service provider, so you're holding or transferring capital on behalf of other people, which as a video game you could be, or who knows what, you plainies, you know, are these questions are out there. If you are that thing, you have to have that license. The problem is today, because we don't have this yet, but we're right on the cusp of it, is Binance has to be licensed in France and in Italy and in Spain and in Germany, and they have to do all the countries that they want to operate in, because we don't yet have that pan-European licensing. MiCA is that thing, which is why today, I believe Estonia is a great place to be building all of this, but because currently the regulations for being a digital asset service provider in France and Germany are above, they're superior to the MiCA level. This is reason why Binance and Crypto.com, Kraken, who are the others? OKX and a bunch of others have put their European headquarters in France, because a friend of mine, David, is the CEO of Binance in Western Europe, and Germany has basically told him, you're never getting a license. We don't want to give you one. I know this is recorded, but hi, Germany. Hi, Baffin. But the reality is starting next year, when Germany has to adopt a MiCA law because the EU has passed this, guess what Binance gets to do? Sell the Germans. Instantly. So this is important for you to understand. If you're going to build anything that does require you to be licensed because you're playing with crypto in that way, MiCA is going to give you the chance to be licensed in any European country and then operate in all of the others. But Estonia is going to be one of the interesting places to build that and do that. Moving from that, though, to the next thing, just because I want to make sure, Arpan, that we talk about your side of this. When you are building a company, then you've got lots of data, especially if you're a crypto company. Well, it's all on chain. That's actually really useful. It's a ledger, it's accounting. But because the rest of the accounting, the establishment of that hasn't dealt with it, they don't necessarily get it. It's not a paper manifest. It's not some online tool that they're used to. That's what you've built. You've built a Web 2 platform, basically, of accounting for Web 3 companies.
Exactly. I mean, the gripe of most people here isn't the fact that they don't want to comply with the existing systems. It's that they can't. There isn't a way to do so. Members who are parts of DAOs, you know, the DAO might itself be incorporated as a Wyoming DAO. It might be anywhere across the world. It might be a Marshall Island DAO. You might be as a natural citizen based out of the the US. And as we know, US citizens, for example, have a fiduciary duty to declare the taxes come tax season. How do you do that? Like you got airdropped this NFT. How does your bookkeeper understand that this picture of a monkey is now worth something? How does that make sense? And traditionally, bookkeepers and accountants, yes, are kind of old school. They love their Excel sheets. They love their pocket protectors, and so on and so forth. So the solution here is to bring that back, to show that people in the Web3 ecosystem are good players. There are members in this ecosystem that want to comply. We are not all just, people who will rug you, for example, not FTX. And it's funny because the idea here is to have a translation layer that allows you to take what is public information on this on-chain ledger, which is public, to translate it into a way that your bookkeeper understands. Now, what does your bookkeeper understand? He understands cost basis, journal entries, chart of accounts. So the task becomes essentially to convert what is 0x1234 sending to ETH to 5678 into a version of which your accountant can understand. And I think what this brings is, even though it's such a simple proposition, the engineering effort required to do so is actually not so trivial. No one has done this. No one is thinking about this in this aspect. Everybody's going into portfolio management. Everybody's trying to automate it. But what if you built a chain today and you wanted to account for it? It's not listed on Chainlist, it's not listed on CoinGecko, but you still want to show it. The idea is that you use SavvyBooks or any other platform that would theoretically do this to show and then be able to report on this. So that's kind of the idea.
So I think what's important, again, for whether you're on the dev side or entrepreneurial side of this, is it's not that you shouldn't build amazing things for Web3, because the reality of this is, I've been around long enough in tech stuff to have seen kind of the stuff in the 90s. Unfortunately, it's been that long, but we have had really two big ways the world has just changed incredibly in the past 30, 40 years. The internet in the 90s, and then everything that's followed since, and now Web3. Yes, we had smartphones. Yes, we had e-commerce. Yes, we had digital payments. We had all these things that were interesting little bumps along the way of the world changing. But Web3 actually creates a transformational shift in the way everything works, because it's the way the web was supposed to, we're on Web3, but technically Web1 was supposed to be Web3. It was supposed to be decentralized, but because the tech couldn't do it, the activity centralized behind the things. Plus certain things, like if we want to have social media and we want to have a Facebook account or an Instagram account, or we want to have LinkedIn, or we want whatever, those kind of have to be centralized for us to use them. Otherwise, we have 4,000 different social media accounts and we don't know each other on the right ones. So it all ends that way. The point is that in order to build stuff on the dev as the entrepreneur, it's not that we don't want to be regulatory compliant. It's not that we don't want to do things the right way. Obviously, there is a certain part of that in crypto that does exist out there, but it's the part that won't last forever. The reality is the future of everything that has to be rebuilt in a Web3 way is mostly still left to be built. We're at the beginning of it. And so that's why I love hackathons like this, because things can be born at stuff like this that become very important, or they can grow into those things. Because the reality is everything that can have a decentralized nature, that can have a digital identity that's more decentralized built into it, everything that can be more transparent and traceable in these transactions, all the stuff that we do that has to be rebuilt. Whatever website that is that you're thinking of, or platform or app. So it's all left to be done. So I'm kind of thinking that we've had an interesting conversation with each of your perspectives. I wonder, instead of asking you another one or two questions here, does anybody have a question they would like to ask one of them? And that would be great. If not, I've got more questions. Okay, very good. James, we have a microphone for?
Mic check, mic check. Thank you all. It's refreshing to hear a panel more on the regulatory side and not as focused necessarily on the tech coming from cybersecurity. This one's for Hermes. Looking at your expertise in legal, what are you looking at, I guess, globally? Is there other initiatives ongoing to sort of establish a more common regulatory status for how we look at things like cryptocurrency? We've mentioned MiCA here. Is there anything else going on at a more global scale, more international collaboration, and what kind of excites you in that space?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. MiCA is like Raido said, it's a regulation that is not perfect. But the sole reason for this was to invent something quickly that could regulate the sector in a more broader manner, like geographically, for example, it's covering EU. And of course, regulation in Web3 and blockchain is way behind the actual business. Now, MiCA went into effect. Now there are already many legislation happening in the background. They are already starting to figure out necessary amendments to MiCA, plus adding regulations on top of MiCA. So what we know for sure is that MiCA will have some really inconvenient add-ons for market players, meaning that in 2 or 3 years, there will be total ban of transactions coming from unhosted wallets that are not associated with specific persons. So all the relevant authorities globally are trying to figure out a unanimous framework so that we could all navigate through it in the same way. But of course, currently the situation is that, for example, in the United States, things are moving in a bit different direction than in EU. So it's never going to be like the same, but at least they are trying hard to figure out ways to synchronize it and to make it more convenient for everybody to apply and do their business on a global scale. And to get back to it's also connected with the question, is that before we spoke about the MiCA and what it is and why it was made, is that yeah, okay, I already covered it in the beginning. Like it's made in a hurry. That's the problem, and this is why it is really hard to kind of make a unanimous thing globally, because everybody's trying to front run the market regulatory wise, but so far they have been unable to. And this is why we have ended up in the same place with all the DEXs and DAOs and all the Web3, that everybody's building and doing their products and building their businesses. And most of the builders and the devs, they don't have the actual idea what is happening on the background. So this is really important that all the founders and all the people who are associated with their projects should give this a bit more focus and to do some research, what is happening in the background. And there are a lot of things happening in the background. These are not covered in the mainstream media. Nobody, like, it's something that happens in the background, but once it gets into effect, it has really serious consequences on your businesses. So that's important when you're building something, when you have a long-term vision for 5 years and you're investing a lot of money and a lot of time into these products. And then at some point you hear that there has been a new amendment to the MiCA, for example, that totally eliminates your business, and you can't restructure it so fast. So this is why you need to think in advance.
I could add here that the European Union is quite big economic area. We have 550 million people living here. And what's interesting is that now many entrepreneurs have said that, okay, we go to Dubai, everything, we can do everything from there. You can't actually, because SEPA payments, but you need to cash out to fiat. And all other areas, like, let's say, those nice islands in Caribbean Sea and everywhere, they can't do business without correlating their own regulation to the MiCA regulation. Otherwise, they will be just islands in the sea. If they want to be global, they have, if they want to do business with Europe, then they have to amend their own legal system to the MiCA. So that's how MiCA is actually making whole world move, and US from the other side of the globe is doing the same. And in the end, I think they will find some common ground, because the interests are those huge entities are the same. And yeah, we will be beaten for a while, but if we will survive, then we will adopt. And of course, the legal system will adopt to the MiCA or this crypto or Web3 as well, because they understood they were waiting for us to die since 2010. They thought it will pass, it will go away. It didn't. And then they started to regulate, they started to prepare for MiCA in 2021, when actually they were trying to solve problems from 2018. They're trying to regulate ICO problems from 2018. So that's very right that technology has way past the regulations, and now regulations are a little bit past technology. They are trying to do it so that they don't miss out again, but they will, of course, because we are smarter than they are. So we will have some waves, and then one day maybe there will be future beautiful.
Well, I think it brings up a really important point for you as builders, which is that in 2017, 2018, the regulations weren't clear or didn't exist at all. And so you could pretty much do anything you wanted to, and then if you were trying to do things correctly, you weren't trying to steal money, you weren't trying to do bullshit, then you could kind of play in a sense because, well, we didn't have rules. You can't play that game anymore, because even if this isn't perfectly clear, the regulators are catching up to speed. And even if you have good intentions, that doesn't forgive everything anymore. So you need to get ahead of these things if there's a reason that you have regulatory compliance. I think it's a super important point to underline. Yes.
Yeah, I had one more remark regarding the previous question and topic, is that as the regulators say and the lawmakers say, that the goal of MiCA is to protect consumers, like we said before. Effect on it, the effect of protecting consumers on MiCA, that's questionable. But the other side of the MiCA, why it was made and put into force, was exactly jurisdiction hopping. And this is something that, like 2-3 years ago, everybody had an idea that, okay, we're going to start our startup in Estonia. The terms are not convenient for us. We can always go to Lithuania, Latvia, Bulgaria, whatnot. And a lot of companies moved because it was easier, it was cheaper to do the transaction in a quick and swift manner. And even at that time, we advised those companies who are working with us that do not do this, because in 2 years you will be in the exact same position. And this is exactly the thing what has happened now. Some companies wasted a lot of resources to move their headquarters or their businesses away from Estonia, and some of them are now moving back, because actually it is easier to deal with these things in here because Estonia is small, the regulators are easily approachable and so on. It's not the case in Germany, Italy, or France. It's a whole different ball game, so to say. So the jurisdiction hopping times are over. So there is no point of thinking to skip the regulations by moving to those British Virgin Islands, what Raido was speaking about, or whatnot, because they will be cut away from the other global framework that the European Union and the United States are working on.
And the great thing about that is that's opportunity for you. That's not a problem, because the US is just shitting the bed on this thing right now. Like, it's terrible. Now they'll figure that out at some point, hopefully. But the point is no matter how we can criticize MiCA or the tax law that's going to come behind it or other things, the place to build a Web3 startup today is Europe. It's the reason why so much of it is happening in France. If we look at by quantity, about a third of what we can find that's being built as Web3 startups is in Hong Kong. Another third of it is in France. But the reality is Estonia has a card to play in that, huge, because this is a great place to just build a company because of e-residency, because of a digital government that is extreme, not flexible in terms of the rules, but flexible in the sense of being able to work with them in an easy way. And so all of this that sounds complex or sounds like, oh crap, I don't want to do that, is actually the thing that makes this interesting. The last thing I'll end with on that, because I don't know if we have time for, if there's one more question that's a quick one, but I want to round us out if not, is just, we talked about auditors, we talked about accounting, we talked about regulation. That is the most unsexy, boring crap on the planet. And you know what that means? It's a way to make a lot of money. Because the best startups to build are the unsexy ones. Everybody wants to build the app that everybody talks about, or the platform that's cool. Everybody wants to be wise or wants to be, whatever that cool thing is. The reality is the opportunities that are more accessible, that can scale to just as big of a degree, are the unsexy things, the things that do regulatory stuff, the things that do accounting or legal or the boring crap that nobody wants to deal with. Except if you solve those problems for everyone else, it can make a lot of money. So everything we talked about is actually to underline the idea that there are things you have to understand as builders, whether you're devs or entrepreneurs, in order to build in the Web3 space. But that's actually creates the opportunity. And that's what I think is really exciting and cool in this space. Yes, last thought.
Exactly what you say is completely right. And those unsexy things are in a big need, because our regulator, they are trying to regulate something they don't understand very well. They don't have tools to regulate. And exactly what Hermes said, that those unhosted wallets will be banned. They wanted to ban them already. They understood that actually it's a stupid idea because it's impossible. You can't go and catch the wind from the wheel. But what they do now is they are banning centralized entities which are licensed by MiCA. They can't accept funds from unknown wallets. And here are guys coming to first day to hackathon, and they came to me to ask about this idea that they would like to build a tool that you can identify your wallet with yourself. And those things actually, they will be in high market very soon, because without those tools, business, you can't just use your funds, anything else, but just I can send to Ethan some Ether, but that's it. Maybe he will send me back or whatever. But if you read European Commission plans, you will see what they try to do, and maybe you will find out how to really do it, because they don't know how to really do it. They just, you must do it. How? Your problem. So,
and what's really interesting then as builders, if you're looking for ideas of things to scale that can be an interesting big market opportunity, pay attention to regulations, because regulations create obligations, which means every company out there, if all of a sudden you tell it, starting in, like there's a company that I work with that I know well in Berlin that does everything related to tracking your carbon usage. It's called Plan A, and they built a platform that lets corporations manage that. Well, why? Because starting next year, you have to measure everything. If you buy an iPhone for your employees, if you buy them a laptop, if you send them on a flight to come to BananaConf, all that stuff has to be tracked for the sustainability impact of it. So a regulatory obligation creates an opportunity for $1 billion startup to show up. That's pretty cool. Not always sexy, but a really cool thing. Please give a huge round of applause for my wonderful panelists. And